It is not like a regular theory subject. How we can classify the loads, different types of forces, different types of loads. So one classification is based on the this one load. So that is referred as static load, and one more is dynamic load. The static load is nothing but, so like you are building beams. You are familiar. You are sitting in the room, or maybe beams or columns. Those beams and columns of the rooms are subject to static load, not dynamic loading. You understood now? The definition of the static load is the load will not changes with respect to time. It is static. So building beams, our own college buildings, beams are there, columns are there. So compared to our weight, students or staff weight, the building weight is very, very high. The self weight of the building, you can say it is considered static load. So the load remains constant. So that is about a static load. Dynamic load means, best example you can understand is when vehicle is stopped, engine is switched off, vehicle is stopped, then most of the components of the vehicles are subject to static loading. So when vehicle is moving, then most of the components of the vehicles are subject to dynamic loading. It may be axle, or it may be the leaf spring, or it may be shock absorbing springs, or it may be piston or cylinder. Everything will be subject to dynamic loading. Only when it is stopped, or engine is stopped, vehicle is not only the vehicle is stopped, vehicle may be stopped, but still engine may be running. When engine is stopped and vehicle is stopped, then each and every component of the load, component of the vehicle is subject to static load. Otherwise, when engine is running, even though the vehicle is not moving, still it is subject to dynamic loading. In simple way, the static load, the magnitude of the load remains constant. That is static load. So once you say dynamic load, the magnitude of the load changes with respect to time, then it is referred as a dynamic load. So especially in the fatigue testing concept, you have to understand more concept. You have more concepts involved. The testing may be required. Testing is very simple test. I have the photos, everything I'll show you. So before going to that, I'll show one is static load and one more is dynamic loading. Suppose fan rod is running continuously. If you switch on the fan and you switch it off, then it may be a conventional load. But if fan rod is running continuously for around 8 hours, then we can say that the bearings inside the fan rods are subject to fatigue loading. Or bearing housing itself may subject to fatigue loading. Or fans may be running at is also subject to fatigue loading, especially not regular room fan. If it is high speed industrial fans, exhaust fan, those blades also subject to fatigue loading. That means load is acting continuously over a period of time, then only it is referred as a fatigue loading. If you consider the piston of the connecting rod of the engine, so it is running, loading is acting intermittently. You have 4 cycles, only at one cycle there will be maximum force. During exhaust stroke, the minimum force may be acting on the connecting rod, or during power stroke, maximum load is acting on the connecting rod. Like that, there is a cyclic loading. At certain time, the load is maximum, certain time load is minimum, or it may be sometimes the zero also. So loading is changes with respect to time, then it is referred as a dynamic loading. The fatigue loading is a one category of the loading where variation of the loading is almost uniform. Suppose if you stand, if you don't walk or run, then your hip joints or legs are subject to static loading. Just best simple example is, it is static loading. If you run for only 1 or 2 minutes, then we can say that it is subject to some amount of impact loading or small there is maybe small dynamic loading, which is a short span of time. Our hip joint, if you consider hip joint, it is subject to dynamic loading, but we cannot say it is you cannot say it is a fatigue loading. If you run continuously for 2 hours or 3 hours, then your legs are subject to fatigue loading. If you move one hand, you can imagine. Just imagine. First I'll give a simple example. Then I'll go for the engineering example. So when your leg is because when you're running, all 2 foot, the feet are legs are not on the ground. One is at the above. You're lifting. When you lift your leg, in such cases that particular leg it is not subject to much loading. But when you put the foot the front, then another leg may not be subject to loading. The loading will be changes. At one time, the left leg is having maximum loading. Within a few seconds, that particular leg is lifted. Then other leg will be having maximum loading because it is the whole body is supported by one more leg. So like that, if you're moving if you run for 1,500 meter, how many times each leg may be subject to the dynamic loading? One time maximum loading, then it comes to 0 or come to minimum. Then once again, when you're walking also, both legs are not subject to same amount of loading. When you lift your one leg, that particular leg may not be subject to loading. Except self-weight, it may not be subject to loading. But my other leg, the whole body weight is taken care by only one leg once you lift the one leg. So if it is running for 1 hour or 2 hours, each leg is subject to the loading fluctuation of the load. That fluctuation of the load is referred as a cyclic loading. You studied about sinusoidal curve. It goes to maximum amplitude, then it comes down to 0, or it maybe goes to negative side also. Those will comes under the sinusoidal curve. Most of the time, fatigue, if you plot load versus time plot, then it will be most of the time it is a sinusoidal plot only. Or in simple way, the fatigue load comes under dynamic loading, and magnitude of the loading is changes with respect to time. The change in magnitude of the load is cyclic in nature, like a sinusoidal curve. It maybe goes to positive side and negative side, positive side and negative side. Sometimes it may be mean is 0 or it comes to mean level. Those are referred as a cyclic curve. Sinusoidal curve is nothing but a cyclic curve. If you plot load versus time, the one time it will be maximum force, then after sometimes it comes to 0, then once again it rises. Or in simple way we can say that the fatigue loading comes under dynamic load. The dynamic loading, the loading will be changes with respect to time, but the way in which loading changes is almost uniform or cyclic. Then such type of loading is referred as a fatigue loading. Best example is the steam turbine blades. Because RPM of the steam turbine blade may be around 10,000 to 15,000 RPM. We can imagine how many times it is subject to variation. Only at one particular time, so only few the blades are subject to maximum amount of loading. Even you studied about gears. One gear is meshing with another gear. Only at fraction of second, the two gears are meshing. Then suddenly one more gear comes and one more set of pairs of gears will come and meshing. Then remaining time, so other gears are free or load acting, and imagine there are 24 teeth. At a time, maximum one gear there may be 24 teeth, another gear then another 24 teeth. At one time, only one gear, one tooth of gear A and one tooth of gear B are subject to loading. Remaining tooths are not subject to any type of dynamic or impact loading. Remaining 23 teeth, there is no loading. Only one tooth is subject to the loading. That is nothing but fatigue loading. Suddenly it comes to 0 when that particular teeth is meshing with another teeth. Then it becomes 0. Remaining 23, no loading. That as it rotates, the remaining teeth are subject to loading. At a time, only one pair of teeth are subject to the fatigue loading, or we can say it is an impact loading. The gear teeth are subject to fatigue loading. Then most of the steam turbine components are subject to fatigue loading. Internal combustion engineering like a crankshaft or pistons or cylinders or connecting rods, even valves, control rods, those will be subject to fatigue loading. So with this introduction, I'll show some PPT. First, I'll show the fatigue testing machine, how specimen is mounted. Then I will explain some concept of fundamental concept of fatigue. It is required for material science, being and mechanical engineering. You should know the fundamental concept. Then Viva also, whenever you get some fatigue testing machine, if fatigue testing, definitely they'll ask some Viva questions. Even though they may not ask, but whenever some experiments are demonstration experiment, they will ask some fundamental Viva question. You cannot understand until you understand in detail, then you may not be able to answer in the examination, like a one word answer or 2 word answer. I start with the actual machine. Okay, I hope PPT is visible. The screen is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now this is the actual fatigue testing machine. So what is required is there is one specimen, but we cannot see the loading, etc. You can see only the fatigue machine. You can see when it is running also, you cannot see any movement of the machine. Only this particular specimen is moving. Just I show the specimen. This is a specimen, it is rotating. So even when machine is running, we cannot see this rotation also. The speed is very, very high. So what is the basic arrangement of the machine is, we require cyclic loading. The cyclic loading is nothing but, you are familiar with the beam. The beam you are familiar. So beam is subject to some amount of loading. Suppose this particular beam is rotated continuously, rotated continuously. Even if you consider regular house building beams, the bottom portion of the beam is subject to tensile loading because it is bent like this. Even when it's subject to loading, it may bend, and finally it's subject to tensile loading. The top portion of the beam also is subject to compression loading. I think you have finished your bending test. I think last class you have finished your bending test. Bending test, the top portion of the beam, you have seen the specimen. The top portion is subject to compressive loading. Bottom side is subject to tensile loading. You understand already? You have seen the bending test. If you want, I'll show it once again. If you want, the top portion is subject to compressive. Bottom portion is also subject to tensile loading. Or if you consider scale, simple scale, you have 1 foot scale. If you press it from the top, simple scale, we have plastic scale or metal scale, so or wooden scale. Nowadays wooden, most of the time we don't use the wooden scale. Earlier days the wooden scales are coming. So when you press it from the top portion of the scale, the flat top portion of the scale, they are subject to compressive load. Bottom portion is subject to tensile load. Can you imagine that condition? So then afterwards, suppose if you rotate the scale by 180 degree, or keep the scale up and down, upside down. Imagine top portion is referred to T, bottom portion is referred to the B. Once you rotate it, the bottom B portion is on the top, B portion goes to up, and T comes down because already you are rotated. So once it is rotated, same T is in the bottom. So now when the previously it is subject to tensile loading, compression loading, after rotation through 90 to 180 degree, it is subject to tensile loading. Simple way here. Here, this is the specimen. The top portion of the specimen is subject to compression or tensile loading. Imagine it is again load. It is also subjected to loading. You cannot see the loading here. Inside there is the arrangement. So there is a pulling loading arrangement. If the loading is already specimen is subject to loading, you cannot see the loading here. So when specimen is pulled from the bottom, what about the top portion? Is compression loading or tensile loading? Compression loading is, imagine you have given 1 foot scale. If you push the scale from both the side, the scale is subject to compression. If you pull the same scale from both the ends, then your specimen is subject to tensile loading. But what about here? Imagine machine is not running. The top portion of the specimen is subject to compression or tensile. Is it tensile or compression?
Tensile, sir.
Top portion. Suppose you have the beam, no regular. Imagine you are taking. I am giving the example of scale. Support the scale from both the end, and at the midpoint you push it down. Both the side it is supported. At the midpoint you have the scale, push it down. What about top portion of the scale? Is tensile or compression? Top portion is subject to compression loading. The bottom portion is trying to elongate. So bottom portion is subject to tensile loading. You understood, no? If you understood that concept, then remaining will be easy. Scale, simple scale, plastic scale is subject to supported at both the ends. Simple supported. Imagine your one person is you are holding the scale at both the sides by hand. So one more, your friend is pushing the scale downward at the midpoint. Then top portion of the scale is subject to compression loading, and bottom portion of the scale is subject to tensile loading. Can you visualize or can you imagine? Are you agreeing for that?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you understood, then everything is complete measure, fatigue testing machine concept, everything it's almost like understood. Now, top portion. Imagine top portion is referred as, I refer it as a A. Bottom portion I am referring as a B now. Now, in that particular position, when you push it from the top, the surface A is subject to compression. Surface B, bottom surface B is subject to tensile force. Now imagine I am keeping the scale upside down. Now A is in the bottom. The same A earlier it was in the top. Now it is already up, you keep it upside down. So same A is in the bottom. Bottom surface is in the top. The B is now it is subject to compression, but earlier it was subject to B. Surface B is subject to compression. Earlier it was subject to tensile. But surface A earlier it is in the top because you are rotated. Imagine you can keep the scale. Imagine one surface is A, one more is surface B. Once it's rotated and loading remains same at the center. So compression loading is changed. Earlier it was subject to compression. Then later it is subject to tensile after rotating through 180 degree. You understood, no? So now if you consider this particular shaft, I think you can visible, shaft is visible. I think those who are using laptop, it is visible. Mobile, I don't think. I'll show the specimen. The specimen is very, very small here. So imagine this is the top portion. Imagine I am pulling this from the bottom, and I am pushing from the down. Let it be pushing. So this top portion is subject to compression. Bottom portion of the specimen is subject to. Imagine this end is supported, and right end to support there is a collet. It is referred as collet. We have the specimen. Just I give the example of scale. The scale is supported, both the ends are holded with your own hand. You are holding the scale, and you are pushing them from the top. Then the top portion is subject to compression loading. Bottom portion is subject to tensile loading. Is in the similar way we have the specimen. That specimen is referred to the fatigue testing specimen. It is already mounted on one support. Then it should be mounted on the other supporter. There is a separate locking arrangement, etc. Don't worry about that. Once you come to the lab, you will demonstrate it once again. But you have to understand the concept at the beginning. Conducting the experiment will not take time. Understanding the concept and takes more amount of time. That's why number of lab hours is very less compared to theory hours, because to understand the concept you require more time. So then once you understand the concept, you can go and conduct the experiment. But if you are without attending the classes, without understand the concept, or if you go and conduct some experiment, is like those things are required for ITI holders. Those who are doing ITI, those who are finishing their ITI, they'll go to the industry, they're given some sketches, they'll go to the machine shop, they'll prepare the specimen according to that. They're working, that's all. No need to think about where this particular component is used, whether that component is suitable or not. They're not worried about that. That's only ITI. There is a maximum practical importance. When you come to diploma engineering, around 25% theoretical aspect, and another 25 to 30% remaining is practical approach. When you come to engineering, almost 60 to 70% of the time you are spending for understanding the concept. Another remaining 30% of the time you are spending for conducting experiment in the lab, like your material testing laboratory or foundry and forging laboratory or your CAMD lab. Now, specimen is mounted. This is a specimen. The specimen is mounted at the one end. They will call it check. This is how they call it. So other end also should be mounted. So once it is mounted, there is an internal arrangement. It will pull the automatically once you mount, and there is a loading arrangement. It will put the specimen in the downward direction. When the specimen is pulled from the down, not by holding here, inside there is arrangement to pull the specimen in the downward direction. So when specimen is pulled in the downward direction, top surface is subject to compression loading, bottom is subject to tensile. So it is referred to the rotating beam experiment. What is meant by rotating beam? Somewhere it is there. Fatigue theory on fatigue, that I'll explain you that. Don't worry about it. So okay, here we can see finally it is almost like a holding the scale from both end. In the similar way, specimen is mounted from the both the support point. One is these are after the collet. This is one collet and this is one more collet. There is a separate spanner is given specially designed for this particular machine. So from that particular spanner, they'll tighten the specimen. It is fitted tightly into the collet. These are referred as a collet. And we have to rotate the specimen. If you hold the scale as it is, the top surface is always subject to compression load and bottom surface is always subject to tensile load, like you are building beams. Building beam is not rotating, it is stationary. Loading is always acting in the downward direction. The top surface of the beam is subject to tensile loading and bottom part of the surface is bottom is subject to tensile loading. Top surface of the beam is subject to compression loading. It's always like that only. So when you at the time of construction also, the top surface of the beam is subject to compression. After 50 year or 100, even after 500 year, like Taj Mahal or some other old historical monument. So building foundations are always subject to compression loading, even for the 100 year or 1000 year. Okay, power is restored. I hope it is audible now. Yes or no?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Okay, PPT.
No, sir, it's not visible.
Okay, okay, then I'll start because
Yes, sir.
now screen is visible. PPT. This PPT is visible.
Yes,
Yes
sir,
or
it's
no?
visible now. Yeah,
Okay.
it's visible.
Now it is don't think it is very simple argument. We have motor and you have a specimen here. So when you're talking about arrangement, it looks like very simple. This is a specimen. So it is subject to pulling from the downward direction. It is a specimen is subject to bending load. At the same time, if specimen is subject to only the bending load, then it will comes under static loading. Imagine you are holding the scale from the both the end, you are pushing the scale at the center, then it will be the static loading. Suppose scale is rotated continuously and still load is applied at the 10 kg of load at the center, then it is referred as a dynamic loading. You know the scale when it rotates, earlier one surface it is subject to compression load, after rotating it may be subject to tensile loading. Once again after rotating through a certain angle, so then it may be once again come back to the compression load, tensile. The same surface, suppose top surface is referred as A, the same surface is subject to the both tensile as well as compression loading. You understood now? If is it audible and PPT is visible?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
Because
sir.
if there is a power fluctuation, because power will come within few seconds, but our line, that our internet line will be disconnected, then it will require another 2 to 3 minutes. That's why I asked. Sometimes without internet continuously we also speaks. Huh? So that means imagine you the scale. So you are holding the scale from the both the ends. Simple example. Don't forget about this complex machine. It's not. Don't think that machine is around a few lakhs or 50,000 or 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees. That machine itself is cost. This small machine costs around 7 lakhs, 6 lakhs, around 6 lakhs rupees. This machine itself, small machine. Now, the scale is subject to bending load because you are holding the scale both the end. Mr. A is holding the scale at the both the end. The Mr. B is pulling the scale at the down, in the downward direction at the midpoint. Imagine it is subject to around 10 kg of load. 10 kg of load is nothing but around 100 Newton load. If some arrangement is given to rotate the scale, some arrangement is given to the rotate the scale because scale. So already you are referred as a top surface is surface A, and one surface is A, and one more surface of the scale is B, flat surface. Once you rotate the scale, the same surface of the scale is subject to tensile at one particular position. When it is in the top position, it is subject to tensile compression. When same surface comes to the bottom, it is subject to tensile loading. If you consider regular room beam, the bottom surface is always subject to tensile loading. Top surface is always subject to compression loading. Even though you are applying that load at the center, still it is subject to top surface is subject to compression, bottom surface is subject to tensile. In the same in the case of scale. If some arrangement is given for rotation of the scale, then the top surface when it comes to bottom, the lower side, then it is the same surface is subject to tensile loading. So I am referring to the surface A. When it is in the top, it is compression. When after rotation, when it comes to bottom, then it is subject to tensile. When it goes to top, then it will be compression. Like the same surface is subject to compression loading and tensile loading. Compression loading and tensile loading. It is almost like a sinusoidal curve. In the sinusoidal curve, half of the curve is positive side, another half is on the negative side. When you come to compare your sinusoidal loading curve with respect to your mechanics of material, the top surface are subject, half of the sinusoidal curve is the The positive side, it is tensile loading. The bottom portion of the sinusoidal curve above the reference line, that will be the compression loading or negative loading. So this type of loadings are referred as a cyclic loading. The cyclic loading, the same surface is subject to alternatively tensile loading as well as compression loading. Then such type of loadings are referred as a cyclic loading. And whenever loading components are subject to loading, imagine the same component is subject to loading, it is subject to stresses. Instead of saying cyclic loading, now I am using the term the component or specimen in the fatigue testing machine is subject to cyclic loading, not static loading. It is subject to dynamic loading. The loading will be changes with respect to time because it is rotated. So I am giving an example scale. If it just holds the scale and if you apply the load, it is only the static loading. If some arrangement is given for rotating the specimen or the scale, then it is subject to compression loading, tensile. Compression, same surface is subject to tensile, compression, tensile, compression. Like that will happen. The same arrangement also made here. This is a specimen. The specimen is held between the two support, and internally there is arrangement to pull the specimen in the downward direction. Suppose such a way that the center of the specimen or the whole specimen is subject to bending loading. Other than that, we have the motor. So motor loads runs continuously. It may run continuously for 5 days. If you run also, motor will not get heated. So such a way they have selected the motor. That they have selected the drive system such a way that drive system have most reliable component. They have, because that motor can run up to 10 lakh revolutions. You can imagine 10 lakh revolution. The counter is designed for up to 10 lakh revolution. That's why this Ducom is this machine manufacturer is Ducom. That is most of the time they'll export those machines. We have selected the high quality machine, especially for the fatigue, and many fine engineering that our master degree students, master MTech in machine design, we have many students are doing project using this machine because this machine was purchased in the last year. Now I am showing a rotating beam fatigue tester. I give the scale. Scale is nothing but a beam. Any member subject to transverse loading is referred as a beam. When you're talking about mechanics of material, any member component subject to transverse loading, then it is referred as a beam. But we have the fan rod. Can you call fan rod as a beam? Fan rod can you call it as a beam? Fan is mounted on the fan rod, but fan rod is not subject to bending load. It is subject to only tensile load. In such case, it cannot be referred as a beam. In mechanics of material, this concept you are studying. Later stage, you are going to study this concept. That beam, how load is acting, what is the magnitude of the transverse loading, then correspondingly you have to find out what is the stress developed in the member in the beam. All those calculations you are doing in your mechanics of material. But the fundamental concept, basic few concept I am explaining in material testing laboratory. But in the examination it will not come for the examination. No need to conduct the experiment in the examination. But if you get the experiment, or if they ask the experiment, they may ask many questions, especially on the related to Viva. So now when you come to word by word, we have the beam, like your scale, and it is subject to loading. It is not a static loading. It is a dynamic loading. Again, dynamic loading, the magnitude of the load changes uniformly or cyclically, like a sinusoidal curve. The sinusoidal curve is almost uniform curve. When your theta is equal to 90 degree or lambda, where theta is equal to pi, it is 0. When theta is equal to 90 degree, its maximum is maximum. When theta is equal to some 270 degree, it will be negative value. Like that, it is like a sinusoidal curve. If you draw force versus time plot, then you will get sinusoidal curve. That is nothing but your cyclic loading. But instead of saying cyclic loading, in mechanical engineering, you are referring as a cyclic stresses. cyclic stresses. Almost like when you come to imagine next to our college we have one more cinema theater. When you going to cinema theater, you may be happy. Your stresses will be relieved. But once again, if you sit in the class, coming back and sitting in the class, you will be more stressed. One time when beam is in the surface of the beam is in the upper, it is subject to compression. When it comes to bottom, it may be subject to tensile loading. It is moves from tensile to compression, compression to tensile. So then set type of loading is referred as a fatigue. We are using the term fatigue. The fatigue is nothing but a one type of loading where the magnitude of the loading is changes continuously or uniformly. Then you have to find out what is the strength of the material when the component or specimen is subject to fatigue loading. Hence, it is referred as a tester. Then you are saying the rotating beam. I have given the example of beam, scale. Scale is nothing but a beam only. If you apply the only load, then it is subject to static loading. If some arrangement is given for rotating the scale, then we can say that rotating beam fatigue tester. We have the specimen is rotated. But what about in bending test? Either a bending test the specimen is rotated. The bending test already over, no? Whether any rotations are given for the specimen in the case of bending?
No, sir.
No, because it is a static stress test. Our load is applied steadily, so you are not rotating the beam. It is bending also like a bending. We have the specimen. Specimen is subject to transverse loading, but we are not rotating the specimen. The top surface is always, imagine top surface is referred as A, it is always subject to compression till specimen breaks. Bottom surface is always subject to only tensile load till it breaks. That is the characteristic of the bending test. That's because the bending test specimen is not rotated. When you come to fatigue testing machine, the specimen is rotating. You have the beam. The bending specimen itself is referred as a beam. I am giving an example, simple example. I started with a simple example of scale. The scale is also considered a beam, but we have given additional arrangement for rotating the scale. That's why we have arrangement here. See here. This is your specimen. So here there is a motor. Why you are using a motor? Because you have to rotate the beam. This is nothing but a beam here. This specimen is beam. For rotating the beam, we have we have motor. Motor, it is highly reliable motor because it should run continuously 2 days or 3 days because still its specimen breaks. So in continuously you have to run. It is not like a few minutes it breaks. It not breaks like this. The loading is almost remains constant. You are not changing the loading in the case of fatigue testing machine. The loading remains constant. The speed may be varies. For the given speed and given loading, you have to run the specimen for 2 days or 3 days or 5 days till it fails. So imagine you have a satellite component. You are launch the satellite component to reach the orbit. It may take few hours or few days also. It may take few days. There are some components. Those components are maybe subject to fatigue. Thus, those components are subject to fatigue for few days. Still, those components should be able to withstand the load. Imagine you are running the imagine to a four-wheeler. You are moving from Bangalore to be Bombay by four-wheeler without any stop. So imagine the internal combustion engine connecting rod. How many times it is subject to higher loading? It's subject to maximum loading, maximum bending. Then it comes to minimum bending, maximum bending, minimum bending. Maybe few lakhs time, the same connecting rod may be subject to higher loading and lower loading. It may be, imagine your loading limit is 100 megapascal. Then during your suction stroke, it may be only 50 megapascal. The stress in the connecting rod, load is minimum during the suction stroke. Load is maximum during your compression stroke or your power stroke. The same connecting rod, imagine in the engine, when you're moving the vehicle from Bangalore to Bombay, same connecting rod may be subject to repeated loading with higher loading and lower loading. 100 megapascal, within a fraction of second, a fraction of a minute, it maybe comes to 50. Imagine RPM of the engine is let it be 1500. The same connecting rod is subject to 1500 times tensile loading. The same connecting rod is subject to 1500 times the compression loading. You can imagine 1 minute the connecting rod is subject to around 1500, that will be 1000 rpm, 500 times compression and 500 times tensile. In the case of steam turbine, those turbine shafts are rotating at a rpm of 1000 to around 15,000 rpm. So now you have the turbine blades are mounted on the rotor. Rotor is in turn mounted on the shaft. So how many times shaft is subject to tensile and compression load on only one surface? Imagine you put some marker pen, you mark it on the top of one surface. That let it be one line. You put one line. That particular area or not normally referred as a fiber is subject to how many times compression and how many times tension load in 1 minute. What is the RPM? Revolution per minute. The 15,000 revolution per minute. It is the most of the time 10 to 15,000 RPM. In the initial level of the steam turbine blades, rotating speed is around 10,000 to 15,000 RPM. But later stage, by using reduction gearing, etc., so finally it reduced to 1,500 RPM or 2,500 RPM because it is finally connected to the generator. Generator should run at some certain optimum speed to get maximum efficiency, the conversion efficiency from mechanical to electrical. So now tell me, if the steam turbine is the RPM of the steam turbine is 15,000 RPM. On the shaft, you marked one line. That line is referring at as A. That particular line, how many times it is subject to compression and how many times it is subject to tensile loading in 1 minute. If you are able to answer that question, that indicate that you understood what is fatigue loading or what is cyclic loading. How many times? RPM is 15,000. That itself is your question and answer session for your Viva. RPM is 15,000. Before starting the machine, you have put one small line on only on top, so that one line on the surface of the shaft along the longitudinal axis. How many times that particular fiber or line is subject to tensile loading and compression loading per minute? How many times? How many times that particular line comes up per minute? Is it 15,000 times? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
15,000. Imagine scale, you are rotating the scale. If the RPM of the scale is 10 revolution per minute. So that means 1 minute you are rotating the scale by 10 times. If you mark one surface, one top surface, one surface of the pen scale as red in red paint, that surface is subject to tensile loading or compression loading 10 times because RPM is 10. But when you come to steam turbine, so that is RPM is 15,000. The same surface is subject to tensile loading and compression loading around 15,000 times. You can imagine the 15,000 times per minute. The stresses are subject to move from tensile stress to compression stress to tensile stress. That's why most of the rotating even engine components or shaft component or even generator components or motor components, even mixie component, rotating shaft component, even dentist, they'll use some equipment. Those components are subject to very high speed. The high speed, all those rotating components are subject to fatigue loading when it is subject to certain amount of load, because here intentionally you are applying a load. Suppose you have the shaft, at the mid of the shaft there is a pulley or gear arrangement. Because of the gear, it is in turn meshing with some other gear, or because of the self weight of the gear itself, that particular shaft will be subject to the bending loading. So that means if the RPM is 15,000 RPM, 15,000 RPM, then we can say that the same portion of the beam is subjected to alternative loading or cyclic loading around 15,000 times. If the RPM is 1,500, then one fiber or one surface of the beam or shaft is subject to alternative stresses, compression tensile around 1500 times. So that type of loading and that type of stresses are referred as a fatigue loading or fatigue stresses. The same arrangement is made here to demonstrate that, because here you have the component, here we don't mount any bearings or any bending load here. Inside there is some arrangement is there to apply the loading. So now what is required? We have to know, because how much amount of times the member or specimen is subject to tensile loading or compression loading, we require RPM. For that, we have digital indicator which shows what is the speed of the motor. How many times that shaft rotates, we require some counter. If it is rotated by 1 RPM, so one cycle, its counter shows only 1. The maximum counter is maximum number of counter it can monitor, or it displays up to 10 lakh revolutions. So this still counts up to 10 lakh, because you can say it is around 9,99,999 the cycle of revolution in its record. Then it will recycle and once again it come back. So that means we require to find out how many times, how many counter or how many cycles the member is subject to cyclic stresses or fatigue loading. Then we require what is the load. Now simple concepts are very simple. Now you can see this is the actual photograph of our machine. So we have to know, you have to fix the speed of the machine. Speed, if you are using the same shaft material for a fan rod, then speed you have to fix it for. Imagine you are testing the fan rod. The average speed of the fan may be around 1500. You have to set the speed of 1500. If the weight of the fan rod is around, let it be around 17.5 kg, 17.5 kg, then you have to set it for 175 Newton, because you have to create in the actual, because we have arrangement for, because we can change the load also, we can change the speed also. But if you run for 1 hour, we may get around 10,000 cycles. If you run for 2 hours, it may get around 1 lakh cycle. That will be changes with respect to time. If you have arrangement for stopping and starting, we can set the speed, we can switch on and off, that we can set the load to 0. There is arrangement, those things actually. So now this is about the rotating beam fatigue tester. Why you are saying it is a rotating beam? Specimen rotates continuously like a shaft, and it is subject to cyclic loading or cyclic stresses. Hence, it is referred as the fatigue tester. I hope you understood the overall arrangement, understanding the concept. Now this is a specimen. It is almost like a tensile specimen. You are conducting one test in a universal testing machine. That is about the tensile test. In later stage, you are going to do next week or next week. Almost dimensions, the shape is almost like a tensile specimen, but surface finish is very, very, very high surface finish is there for fatigue specimen. So now once it is not pulled, the specimen is not pulled, so it is rotated continuously. Other than rotation, the specimen is subject to transverse loading or bending loading. Because of rotation as well as bending load, the specimen breaks. So now you have to mount the specimen. There is a mounting arrangement, etc., that we can understand. Practically, you can come and conduct once you are able to come to college. So now there is a special spanner to tighten the workpiece in the collet. This is referred to collet, and this is one more collet. You have to first insert the specimen. You have to tighten with the spanner. It is supplied by the company itself. There's a special spanner we can see. So here, one collet you are rotating in one direction. Another using one more spanner, you are rotating in the opposite direction. That is how the specimen is mounted. It is almost like equivalent to holding the scale with 2 hands. But it should be gripped properly here, because this specimen will run for a few hours or few days to test the life of the shaft or beam. So these are the special spanner designed only for fixing the specimen, especially for the fatigue testing machine, especially for this particular Ducom make. So now here already you have mounted one specimen to show. This is one more collet. So here we have shown, because the only one side is mounted, it is, you can push it like this and you can mount, you can fix the other side of the specimen also. This is one more extra specimen we have. So now we can see here, this is already one collet specimen is mounted on one collet, and in one collet or one gripper, and in the similar way you have to mount the specimen in the other side also. So now you have to apply load. I have given the example of load. You are holding the scale between two support, and at the center you have to apply the load. That load, for applying the load, you have to keep the weight. Imagine you have thread, you are pulling the thread, at the center you are hanging some weight. So then thread is subject to bending load. In the similar type mechanism is used, but here if you keep around 100 gram, it will be multiplied by 5 times. There is a force magnification arrangement that you are going to study. There is one more subject that is called as kinematics of machines and dynamics of machines. You are going to study different mechanism. Imagine you can use some lens. If from the lens size of the lens maybe 10x 10 minutes, it is magnified by like a regular microscope. If you say microscope, so 10x means your size is magnified by 10 times. If the 1 mm specimen, if you keep, so that is in the if you see through the microscope set for 10x, then we can see this 10 mm instead of 1 mm. In the similar way, there is an internal arrangement. If you keep 100 grams, the load will be multiplied to 5 times. It is equivalent to keeping for 1 kg is equivalent to applying 5 kg load on the specimen. That is what the load magnification factor. Load magnification factor is 500 or 5 times. So now this is the equipment. Already specimen is mounted. This is even if you rotate even we started, and I plan to show demonstration also. If you show that the demonstration, you look like a stationary. You cannot see the rotation of the specimen itself. Still, if you want, I'll show the video in the next class. So, but the only thing is you have to mount the specimen properly, because it's running at higher RPM. If you don't mount properly, it may hit, because it may come out from the collet. It may hit anyone, because there are 15 to 20 members are moving around the machine. So that's why mounting the specimen is very, very extra. You should be extra careful when you're doing practical in the lab. I hope you'll get a chance to conduct practically. This is one part. Then what you have to note down is, when you come to your experimentation part, observation part, very simple. The speed is fixed at the beginning. Before starting the machine itself, speed is fixed here by speed adjusting knob. The load is also fixed here. The load you are not going to change. In the bending test, I think already you conducted that, you have finished bending test. The loading is changing from 0 to around 30 kilonewton or 30 kilonewton. The loading is increased from 0 to 30 kilonewton. It may be 1 kilonewton, 2, 3, 4, etc. But load is also fixed in your fatigue testing. Imagine one specimen is mounted. After fixing the specimen, you have to fix the load. You are fixing the speed. Now speed is fixed. The load is also fixed for a given specimen. What you have to note down is, after half an hour or 1 hour, the specimen may breaks. So whenever it breaks, because your RPM, the revolution per minute, initially 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it continuously running. So whenever specimen breaks, we'll get one reading. This reading you have to note down. So suppose this reading, it indicate that, so 87,992 number of cycle, the specimen is broken. That means your specimen is able to resist the fatigue loading up to 87,992 number of cycle. Normally, you are referring this as a fatigue cycle, as fatigue strength as number of cycles or number of millions of cycles. Suppose we have the fan, it is running at 500 RPM, 1000 RPM. Imagine fan is running around 24 hours. The 24 hour, how many revolution it rotated per 1 minute? It is 1000. 60 minutes, it is 60,000. 1 hour, 60 into 24. That is then 1 hour number of cycles we get. For 365 days, you can imagine, no? how many number of cycles you undergo, this bearings or bushers. That is the number of cycles the component may face. It may take 1 million of rotation or 2 millions of rotation. Normally, you are talking in terms of millions of rotation. So the once that particular rotation is over, that component may fails. Finally, you have to note down only one value at what number of cycles the specimen breaks. That is, you are getting in terms of cycles. There is no much reading. That's all you have to take down. But more of that, conducting the experiment, no need to conduct the experiment in the examination. But they may ask a lot of fundamentals. But lab test, you may ask for that. This is specimen. This is arrangement. Now, in your fatigue test, in simple, an experimentation is considered. For a given specimen is prepared as per some DIN standard. The specimen dimension, everything will be there. I'll put it in your manual. It is not there. I will include and I'll put it separately because last year you have purchased. This is the first time you have conducted the experiment. Already you have conducted the experiment for demonstration for 3 to 4 experiments. Already you have done. That will give them these values. Now, you have to mount the specimen. Then you have to apply the loading arrangement. There is some other point. It's inside. Once you open, you can apply the load like a weighing balance. On one side, you are applying the load. So then the load, you have to fixing the load. Once machine start, you cannot change the load like your universal testing machine. Once you start the machine, load is increasing from 1 kilonewton, 2 kilonewton, 3 kilonewton. That will not happen in the case of fatigue. The speed is also fixed. The revolution per minute. That is like if it is fixed for the 500 RPM, it runs continuously for 500 RPM. For a given loading and given speed, then you have to find out. So when the specimen breaks, it is nothing but imagine you are running for continuously at certain speed. Someone has to note down one. You after running for 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Imagine you are 100 people running continuously After 1 hour, then 50 people may collapse. After 2 hours, another 25 may collapse. After 3 hours, only remaining is 10. And after 4 hours, only one person is running and remaining are collapsed. In the similar way, here specimen also fails at certain time after half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours. That time you have to note down. At the same time, how many number of cycles it undergone, that you have to note down. That is your fatigue test. You have to note down only 2 values are fixed during observation itself. Speed is you have to write only 500 RPM. Then weight is, let it be around 100 Newton or 50 Newton or 25 Newton. That you have to note down. That is comes under observation. Then you have to observe when specimen breaks, only number of cycles you have to note down. That's all. There is no much arrangement. So now, before going for some fundamentals of fatigue testing machine, there are some fundamentals concept. I'll finish one more test. That is magnetic particle testing. That is easy. Is it comes under the destructive testing or non-destructive testing? No. There are 2 types of testing. There are 2 types of testing in material testing laboratory. One is destructive and one is non-destructive testing. Fatigue testing comes under destructive or non-destructive. These are the question and answer session. It is like your
Destructive, sir.
It is a destructive because you are breaking the specimen. Even bending test also, so your specimen is broken. You have seen the videos also. You have shown some photos of broken specimen also. That is a destructive. That is the specimen is totally destructed. But there are some tests. Suppose after doing all destructive testing, your components are produced, and you are mounting. You plan to mount it on the engine. Imagine you are tested for fatigue testing is done for the material used for the connecting rod. Then after doing testing, connecting rod is manufactured and it is mounted. But still, we have to test any defect is there inside the connecting rod. We cannot destroy the specimen. You cannot find out. For that, you have to go for non-destructive testing. Or if there is any crack on the component, on the surface crack, then such type of crack can be determined by using one more test, that is referred as a magnetic particle testing. Then we will move on to magnetic particle testing. But in the examination, magnetic particle test may come for your test as far as for the examination it will be there. but fatigue testing is considered, it won't come for the conduction of the experiment will not come for the examination, but they may ask many YO questions on this experiment. But some more fundamentals, if time permit, I'll explain in the next class. Otherwise, anyhow, I have to explain those concepts in the material science. Then magnetic particle testing. There is no much concept. If you know electromagneticity and electromagnetic forces or magnetic fluxes, you heard about magnetic flux in your physics or physics you study. If you know what is magnetic flux, how the magnetic flux are distributed in the material, in the magnetic material, so then that is sufficient to understand the concept. Concept involved in magnetic particle testing is not so much. So before that, I think first I'll show the video for magnetic particle testing. Then I'll explain. Then if you want, I'll play the video once again. Before that, to play the video, I have to come out from your. I have to close all those. Hello,
Seventh and Google Classroom is it?
7th and 9th.
What's that Google?
I'm not. Member.
You're the admin.
No, I'm not admin.
It is the open answer.
This time class with me.
Okay, classmates.
Okay. Okay, I'm moving on to this video. First, I'll show the video of magnetic particle testing. Then I'll explain. Don't leave. Still, there is one more experiment.
Switch is there and AC DC current is there. AC oscillate. Next,
Video is visible?
Yes, sir.
Video is visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll explain the concept first. You see the video.
Color is there, magnetic particle powder. Say, observe, fix it. Again, so material, fix it material, and yoke is there, one switch is there, and AC DC current is there. AC oscillate. Next, yoke is there. Say, you fix it. Or what is there now? You slant it, you press it, powder. So So after say yoke is there now, we'll put it. That is his mind state. It's a yoke. So 1, 2, 3 times you press it. 3 times you fix it. After slowly yoke will remove. After say this line, say crack is there now. You observe it. Crack is there. Crack. Sometimes 2 or 3 holes is there. Sometimes 2, 3 holes will come. Sometimes 1 wall will come. See, the cracks is there. This position up is there. This is magnetic particle test.
So, okay, I think I'll explain the concept. I think afterwards I will play it once again if you want. First, you have to understand the concept. The concepts are very simple compared to your fatigue testing machine. The concept used in magnetic particle inspection or in normally after MPI, it is very simple because already studied physics in your PUC level, even high school level, even engineering also you studied physics. So then concept become very easy to understand. It is not like your fatigue test concept. Okay, PPT is visible now? Yes or no? PPT is visible or not?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So now it is referred as magnetic particle testing, or it is also referred as the inspection. Inspection and testing are words are interchangeable. You can use. Normally, it is referred as MPI, magnetic particle inspection. When you go to industry, they don't say MP, magnetic particle testing. They'll say MPI. Do the MPI test like that. They'll do. It comes under non-destructive testing. What is the purpose of using this test is to detect cracks in the given material using magnetic crack detector. What equipment you are seeing, that is referred as magnetic crack detector. It based on the magnetic lines of fluxes. It based on the principle of magnetic line of fluxes. So that equipment or apparatus used is magnetic crack detector. That is referred as magnetic crack detector. This is the magnetic crack detector, or you can say magnetic particle testing equipment. So what you have to do? Imagine this is the specimen. So this testing, imagine this particular testing or magnetic particle inspection can be done only on ferrous or non-ferrous material. Now you can tell no. Can you conduct this test on non-ferrous material like aluminum, copper?
No, sir.
Because as name in itself indicate, it is used only for magnetic materials. Most of the time, ferrous material and it is alloys. It can be used. You have to magnetize the component. Imagine this is a specimen. I think if you have a better specimen, okay. This is the specimen. This is the specimen is given here. Imagine this is some component. Let repeat. This is a component. If component is magnetic, this ferrous and or its alloy, then only we can magnetize the component. You understood, no? For testing the any crack on the surface, you're talking about the surface crack. There are two types of crack. The crack may be there on the surface or inside also. There are defect in the outside the material or inside the material also. To detect the surface crack, so this magnetic particle inspection is conducted. For detect the surface crack, we need to magnetize the specimen. Magnetize specimen is, I'll show the some concept first. Show some this here. This imagine when once it is specimen is, imagine this is the specimen. Once specimen is magnetized, understood? No, automatically one side become north and another side become south. These lines refer to magnetic field lines or magnetic fluxes. You understand now those concepts you studied in physics in lower level, or in PUC or high school or even engineering also. So when material is magnetized, so then we cannot see, but there is a magnetic fluxes of lines inside the material. You can imagine those are the magnetic fluxes of the line. These are the schematic diagram. So now, if there is no defect or crack in the material, imagine this is a defect-free specimen. In the defect-free specimen, the magnetic flow of lines of it moves continuously. This magnetic flux will move continuously if the material, if there is no crack. If there is a air gap, is it magnetic lines of fluxes fast moving through the air gap or air or vacuum? I am talking about the magnetic field lines. Imagine there is a gap here, crack here. Is it magnetic? The lines of fluxes will move through this air gap. Crack is nothing but a air gap. But it will always take the solid path only on the material only. I think you have to little bit understand. You have to understand the concept. If there is no defect in the material, so all magnetic lines of force are moving from one end to the another end, from south to north, in that let it be parallelly without any deviation. All are, imagine all are moving, for typical case, all are moving in the straight line. Suppose if there is a crack here, we can see here, it's a crack. In such cases, imagine this is a crack. The one magnetic line of force flux line comes here. Because of the crack, there is a air gap. Because of the air gap, there is a more resistance to these magnetic lines of fluxes. It will take different path here. And here also it will take the different path. Here also it will take the different path. Here also it will take the different path. I hope you understand. You are understanding now. Imagine there is a crack is there. So whenever there is a crack, the magnetic fluxes will changes its direction. But here there is no defect. Here there is no defect. So hence it will force all magnetic flux lines will move in the same direction without changing the direction. On the top of, imagine on the top of the specimen you put some powder. That is about the magnetic flux powder. I think. So this is the powder you are putting on the top surface of the specimen here. So instead it is not magnetized. First you have to magnetize this specimen. For magnetizing the specimen, you are keeping this magnetic particle testing equipment. That is a yoke type equipment. So this side, this will become one side, and this will be another side. It may be positive or negative. So then it will be magnetized, like here. So now you have the button here. It is a simple button. So whenever current flows through this, the material will be magnetized. That is very simple. Whenever current is flows through DC current, so this material is magnetized. So once it is magnetized, if there is no defect, so you are putting the powder on the surface. The powder is not disturbed. Powder is not disturbed if there is no defect in the material, because all magnetic lines of fluxes are moving in the same direction. But if there is any defect, this is a magnaflux. This is a powder. It is a magnetic powder. It is company name is Magna Flux. Don't worry about that company name. It is a magnetic particle. So this is the powder, Magnaflux powder. if this particular powder is sprayed on the surface, if there is no defect, this flux powder will not be get disturbed. In simple way, imagine you are putting some dust on the tabletop. If there is no air, it will be intact as it is. It is not disturbed. Suppose if there is a air, this powder may run away from the places. It move to left or right, or it move up because if there is a air, high pressure air, etc. In the similar way, if there is you have put some sprayed powder on the surface, the metal surface, already you have seen how it is put. If there is no defect, all magnetic line of fluxes are moving in the same direction. There is no change in direction. There is no disturbance of the powder. The powder is uniformly distributed throughout the specimen. Magnetized specimen. You can say that magnetized specimen. If there is a defect in the specimen, crack in the specimen, whenever the magnetic flux comes here, it will take the path on the, because it is a air gap. It is a crack. On the top of the crack, it is not a 2 mm or 4 mm or 6 mm crack, it is a very small micro crack. On the above the crack, there is a magnetic flux powder. It is a magnetic material. So this magnetic line of fluxes will try to take the path over the powder instead of the solid material because of the crack. So that means this powder will be disturbed now. It's try to move up. It is disturbed from the original position. If you see the specimen, all places where it no defect, the powder is uniformly distributed. Wherever there is a crack, when the specimen is magnetized, only on those spots the powder is disturbed. So once powders are disturbed or there is a deviation from the original, the uniformity, from that we can conclude that so there is a crack in the specimen. Only thing is we cannot find out what is the depth of the crack. We cannot find out from magnetic particle testing. What is the width of the crack? We cannot detect. What is the size of the crack? We cannot detect from the magnetic particle testing. Only thing is, so wherever there is a crack, when specimen is magnetized, so then, so on that particular spot, the material is disturbed, or we can say that the powder is moved to the left or right. That you can see in the video. That video, or when you come to lab also, once again we'll show the actual, once again demonstration will do. It is not much difficulties. So this is a yoke type MPT. This is taken from the net. This is one. These are the electric, almost like electrical conductor. The specimen become magnetized. The advantage, disadvantage, everything is there. Don't worry about it. Now, once again, I'll play the video. Then you'll come to know. In simple principle is, we have magnetic. This magnetic particle inspection is can be used only for the ferrous material. That's the first part. So once the specimen is magnetized, we can imagine there is a magnetic fluxes of lines are moving in the specimen. If there is no defect, already you have put some powder, magnoflux powder on the top surface of the specimen. If there is no defect, so there is no disturbance of the powder on the top surface, it is uniformly distributed. Wherever there is a crack, so magnetic flux lines of fluxes will take different path. So whenever magnetic lines of fluxes will take different path, on those path, so there is a disturbance of the powder from the original position or original position. So from our eye, we can say that where powders are disturbed, So that indicate that whenever there is no, it lost uniformity at only some certain point, that indicate that and that particular spot there is a crack. What is the size of the crack? What is the width of the crack? What is the depth of crack? Those things we cannot identify. That's for that you have to go for ultrasonic fraud detector, some other devices you have to go. But we can detect, we can say that this component is having a crack. If there's a crack in the component, we can in the production shop or in the manufacturing shop, if there's a crack, we have to reject the component. If there is no crack, we have to accept the component. That's why it is a simple test to detect whether crack is present or not. For that, you can go for the magnetic particle testing. Once again, that video is only 2 or 3 minutes. Once again, I'll play so that you'll get some idea. Now you can understand the video better because now you understood the concept.
is there? What is a magnetic particle powder is there? Magnetic particle
Now this is the specimen.
is material. So what is there?
After keeping the specimen, you have to put magnetic particles or powders on the specimen.
This color is there, magnetic particle powder. See, observe, fix it. Again, so material, fix it material, and yoke is there, one switch is there, and AC DC current is there. AC pathway. Next, yoke is there. See, you fix it. Before, what is there now? You stand it, you press it, powder. So after, say yoke is there now, put it, that is his mind stream, say yoke, so 1, 2, 3 times you press it, 3 times you fix it.
Now it is we are magnetizing the specimen.
After, say, this magnet, say crack is there now, observe it, crack is there.
So wherever the crack, we can see the disturbance of the powder.
3 holes is there, sometimes 2, 3 holes will come, one time or 1 wall will come, say, because the cracks is there, this position of this. This is magnetic particle test.
It is a simple test, but don't think that within few minutes we can conduct. In the examination, they'll ask the Viva question. Based on the Viva question, they may decide the marks also. There's a marks for the procedure at conduction of experiment. But if you perform well in the Viva with respect to that particular experiment, you may get better mark even for the practical part. That is in simple procedure is you have to take the magnetic ferrous material or component. First, you have to put the powder on the surface. Then you have to magnetize the component. Once it is magnetized, if there is any crack in the material on those regions, the magnetic powders are disturbed. So you can identify the unique that particular area that indicate that there is a crack in the specimen. So if there is a crack, you have to reject the specimen, or you have to go for further testing to determine whether the crack is within the limit or not. So that is the one more experiment that comes under part A. The fatigue testing comes under part B. Fatigue testing machine is only for the demonstration purpose. But why will be asked for the class mark, the fatigue testing machine, you have to write the experiment, will give the values. For that, you have to note down the values. It is not like a bending test, you can finish within 5 minutes, but it makes specimen breaks after 1, 2 days or 3 days. Already our MTech students are doing the experiment. I think after 8 hours or 9 hour rotation, the specimen break that we cannot show. The 8-hour video, I cannot show it here. Even breaking, when we don't know continuous when it breaks, that video also capturing the video, keeping the video 8-hour video at that for waiting for one moment to capture that video. That facilities are, those things are not required. Mainly specimen break, that's all. So those are the 2 experiments we have finished today. Do you have any doubt? If you have any doubt, we can discuss. So then just go through some of the Viva questions. At the end, it is there. Explain the principle of magnetic flow detection. You have to explain magnetic flow of the lines, etc. What are the different types of method of magnetization? There are different methods there. What are dry and wet methods of magnetic particle testing? The dry magnetic particle testing, dry powder you are putting. In the wet, you are putting the liquid. What are the industrial application? Most of the ferrous component they use. How yoke type of magnetic crack detector works? In simple. So when it is when the specimen, it is mainly used for magnetizing the specimen. That's all, nothing else. What are the precautions to be taken? What is first you have to clean the specimen neatly. Then you have to put the powder uniformly, and because lot of high voltage current is there, so that's why you have to keep extra precaution. Now, what are the precautions you are taking for electrical work? The limitation of magnetic particle flaw detection. What are the limitation? What are the limitation of magnetic particle testing?
Sir, we need a ferrous material.
It is only used for the. Is it PPT is visible? PPT is visible?
Still the video is there, sir.
Still video is there. Okay, 1 minute. Then you have to go for video is gone, I think. Because these are even manual also. At the end of manual, I am not given n number of questions at the end of the manual. Each experiment I have prepared the manual. Each experiment, the related Viva questions are given. The limitation, major limitation is it is used only for ferrous material. What are the advantages of magnetic particle testing? The cost of the equipment is less. Then time required is also very less. So then this is a general question. Can you use it for the non-ferrous material? No. Reason is those material cannot be magnetized. Can you use the magnetic particle for a subsurface and internal flaw detection? Is it possible? Subsurface and internal flaw detection. It is not possible. Only on the surface flaw is there. We can surface in subsurface. So subsurface it is up to certain limit depth. So it will detect. If it is a depth at there is a crack at 10 mm depth, it will not detect. Then in such cases, you have to go for ultrasonic detection. In the similar way, there is a Viva question for fatigue testing also. Just I'll spend another 5 minutes. Fatigue testing is a more concept I'll explain in the next class, because if we explain too many things afternoon session, these are some of the just the failure of aircraft because of the fatigue. I'll explain in the next class, don't worry. If I have the questions, I'll check. And before that, what is fatigue? So we have definition, American Society for Testing of Machines, Testing and Machines. Definition of fatigue. You know what is fatigue now? The process of progressive, localized, permanent structural changes. You can see, strictly speaking, once you say what is fatigue, the process of progressive, localized, permanent structural changes. The crack will be formed at localized region. Because of the crack, structure will be changes occurring in a material subject to condition that produce fluctuating stresses. I am using the term fluctuating stresses or repeated loading or cyclic loading, because loading is changes continuously. Stresses will be changes continuously from negative to positive or compression to tensile. At some point or point that may culminate in a crack or complete fracture after a sufficient number of fluctuation. That may culminate in crack. It may initiate crack or complete fracture. The specimen may completely fractured. We have seen the fractured specimen. Sometimes the crack will not propagate. It stops there only. So that's why general definition is given. That means the process of progressive, localized, the permanent structural changes occurring in a material subject to a condition that produce fluctuating stresses at some point or points that may culminate in crack or end with crack or complete fracture after a sufficient number of fluctuations. Fluctuation is nothing but fluctuations are measured in counter. There is an electronic digital counter The fluctuations are measured in the electronic digital counter. The stresses are measured, stresses are determined because already we know the force we are applying. From the force, we can find out the stresses. Then it is subject to fluctuating stresses because as it rotates, automatically material is subject to fluctuating loading or compressive to tensile, and it is a permanent structure. Localized permanent structural change. It is nothing but a deformation. Localized deformation. Instead of the localized deformation, they are using the term progressive. Small crack will be formed. The crack will propagate very, very slowly. Then afterwards only we can see the bigger crack. Initially, very, very small crack will be initiated or nucleated. So in the fatigue, the crack is nucleated or initiated in the fatigue failure. But there is a one more failure, that is a fracture. In the case of fracture, crack is already existing in the material. When it is loaded, the material may fail. That is a different concept. Don't worry about that. Try to remember this definition, or at least the meaning of each word used in the definition. This is the definition throughout the world. They will accepted standard because American Society for Testing and Material, the definition is accepted throughout the world. Even most of our testing machine used in your university, your MT lab, it is based on ASTM standard. And what are the equipment you are using in foundry? What standard you are using? Do you remember? You heard about AFS? AFS. AFS is for American Foundryman Society. What are the equipment used in foundry lab? Most of the equipments are designed and procedures followed as per American Foundryman Society standard. That those are the standards are there. Just at least you remember most of the equipment used in MT lab, it follows ASTM standard. Most of the equipment used in processes, equipments, and measurement procedure used in foundry lab, it follows the American Foundryman Society standard. If you remember those things, sufficient. So, okay, I think we'll conclude. And if you have the manual, read the manual for another 10 to take around 5 minutes break. Then read the manual, especially the magnetic particle testing, because fatigue testing manual is not the experiment is there in the manual, not there in the manual. Shortly, I will put it in the Google Classroom. That fatigue testing manual, because we have received the equipment recently. That's why the last year this experiment is not conducted. This time only we are conducting the experiment. That's why that manual is experiment is not available in the manual. But magnetic particle testing manual you read. I'll give you around 5 minutes time break, or 5 to 10 minutes break you take and read. Then try to understand. Then remaining part of your because we have the lab up to 4:30. Remaining part is for the self-study. Self-study part. If there is any questions, you can see here checklist for discussion. What is the distinctive about surface appearance of the fatigue? What is the stages in the fatigue fracture? Where do must fatigue crack starts and why? What is the mean stress and the R ratio? What is the difference about behavior of the steel and aluminum that with respect to fatigue? Why does improving surface finish improve the fatigue properties? So those are the answer. So now you're not able to answer now. That's why in the next class, first half an hour will spend for explaining the fatigue mechanism. How fatigue takes place, what are the fatigue mechanism, what is fatigue, what are fatigue resisting material, how we can improve the fatigue resistance, all those things we'll discuss. Then you can understand this questions. You can answer for these questions. Now, if I explain, it is not like a short one word answer or one line answer like your magnetic particle testing. But here you have to understand a lot. That's why I have the complete PPT and details. One after in the next class you can answer, because I will spend another half an hour in the next class. Take around 10 minutes break. Then remaining time the remaining time is for the self-study time. You study yourself. Okay, I'll stop the lecture session. That don't think that it is the end of your lab. I'll go for Stopping the recording.